Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Performance Talk. My name is Yule Gordon. My partner, Chris Costa, is not with us right now. He's taking a little leave of absence and handling some personal business. He'll be back, but we do like partners do and teammates do, where I'll cover for him until he gets back, and that'll be it. Today, we have the pleasure of having with us Coach Eric Klein. Coach, how you doing today?
I'm doing great.
That's great. Why don't you take a minute and tell our listeners a little bit about you and what you're doing now, and just flow right on into how you got into this thing.
Okay. Well, my name is Eric Klein. I'm the Director of Sports Performance at New Mexico State University. Going in on my third year, starting my third year, going into our third season there. I oversee all sports, strength and conditioning for the university, but I directly work with our football program. We have a good sized staff that handles. We have a men's basketball strength coach, women's basketball strength coach,
Right.
And then our five or so that work with football that also cover other sports as well. Great staff. We get along very well, together and are able to collaborate with each other. And, it's, like you said, good teammates, you cover down on other guys' weaknesses, and when they need help, you fill in when they can. My background, I've been at this for over 20 years now. I started at a small Division II school, Saginaw Valley State in Michigan, where I started as a football coach, track coach, and anything where I could fit in.
Everything, coach.
Small schools, you kind of do that, and so. I was fortunate enough that I was around good people and great head coaches in both the football head coach Jerry Kill and the head track coach Jim Nesbitt that allowed me to do both. I was a thrower and a football player in college, and so they allowed me to be able to work both sides of the spectrum there. And that really is what led to my becoming a strength coach. As an athlete, I was a guy that I enjoyed the weight room. I worked out regularly. I did everything that my sport coaches and strength coaches asked of me. But I was also that guy that was curious, right?
Right.
We all come across those athletes. Well, why are we doing this? Why? And some are stalling and being knuckleheads, and others are genuinely curious. And I was the curious one, and so that led me down the path of strength and conditioning, because you realize when you're a dual sport coach, you don't get to do all the things as just a one sport coach does, right? So I wasn't out recruiting. I wasn't able to go out recruiting. I wasn't doing those things. So I transitioned into the weight room. And so that was where I began my path as a strength coach. And what happened was people started seeing the results that were happening for our football team there and our track team. And so then I started to get the questions of, can you help us with basketball? Can you help us with volleyball? And so I started doing that, and realized that, I love being around the student athletes, right? I love coaching.
Right.
I love helping people get from point A to point B and seeing them succeed in their chosen endeavor. I tell when we have recruits on campus, you're selected here because you're a very good football player. And strength and conditioning is one part of it. And I will celebrate when you PR in the weight room, but we'll celebrate more when you're making plays on the football field, because that's what you really want to do.
There we go.
That's why you're picking us over, whatever the other schools that are looking at you. And, I see myself as a way to help facilitate you making plays on Saturday.
Isn't that when it gets right down to it, we're a service oriented profession. Service
Yes.
is what we're about. The athletes are focused, but you mentioned all kind of ways to serve in this profession, from helping out your compadres to doing a little bit of extra work, but then the focus on the athlete is where we are brought in to make the difference.
Yes.
So yeah, so you said 20 plus years. So we've been around. I've been around a little longer than that. But I'm sure we experienced some of the same things when we first came into the profession, because from 85 to 95, almost 2000, that was a period in this profession where everything was kind of a mixing bowl and a boiling pot, and it was trying to, athletic training was trying to get out of there and do their thing, and strength and conditioning was trying to get out of there and do their thing. Sport coaching and skill coaching was solidifying its ground and grasp. So all these people who want something want some time for the athlete, from the athlete.
Yeah. Right.
We have to figure out, what's the most advantageous time for us, and not to take away from the other coaches that need that time to make that athlete better. What's your approach with that whole thing?
We support what the head sport coach wants, right?
Right.
So, I think the biggest thing there is collaborating with them on, if you think of like physical schedules, you're collaborating with them on the physical schedule of, hey, we want this amount of time for practice, or we want this amount of time for meetings. Now, where do we fit in? Where do we fit in that athlete's schedule as far as their academic commitments, their social commitments, we want, all the athletic programs that I've been involved in, we're trying to create the whole athlete,
right,
from a human person. So their academics has always been big with the football coaches that I've been involved with, and getting a degree. That's, if you look at our program here, that's goal number one: graduate. Right. Goal number two is win games or win our conference. So, that puts the priority there. So, we're just, like I said, we're just a piece of the puzzle, not more important than any other component of it. And so trying to find where we fit in is number one. Now, we're fortunate enough here at New Mexico State that we're able to get everybody in one block of time. We're a morning team, so
okay.
Our guys are in the morning and out. We generally have them out of here by noon, and then they have their academics the whole rest of the day. So we're humping it during the morning and getting the things done that we need to get done at that time.
That's I know every school has a different schedule, a slightly different approach. But I know in some of your experiences, in just doing a little background on you, you have been the guy that you have a nice staff now.
Yes.
Talk to our young professionals who are maybe in that D3 school or NAIA school, and they're just wanting to give it. They're just, they're almost done with it because they are the staff.
Right. No, so, you look at my career now, and obviously I have that staff, but at one point in time in the early 2000s, from about 2001 to 2007, 2008, I don't remember exactly. I was at Southern Illinois University. I was the head strength coach, trying to, I was going and grabbing individuals And
Yeah.
hey, you're in the kinesiology major. You want to be a strength coach. You want to help in the weight room. I just, shoot, I was at a fundraising event, and now he's a great friend. He's the head strength coach at South Dakota, and he was the bartender at a fundraising event, and we struck up a conversation, and he was into training, and he was into training and dietetics, and I said, why don't you come over and help in the weight room and see if this is something that you want to do? And he agreed, and from there I was able to get a GA position, create a GA position for him, and that took his career off. But for myself, it was, and my wife goes, hey, you look back on those in fond memories, but remember that was a trying time in your life. You're working 15, 16-hour days, and you're going 7 days a week. And when you're not in the weight room and you're at home, you're working on the next phase or the next week's
right. Yeah. Oh, man,
it's like you never stop. And I think, that's just part of being at a place where you're the only guy or only gal. And if you really want the success for your athletes and the programs that you work at, you have to be willing to make those sacrifices. It can be frustrating. Trust me, I totally understand. But if you really, and I say really, and there's a saying out there that if you really, italicized, really want to be a champion, then the work doesn't matter. And I think that as a strength coach, that applies to us just as much.
Those of us who have had some or been fortunate enough to have had some success doing this, whether on the private side or in institutions or with teams and organizations, the first thing I think we learned, and would you agree, is that you're going to do the work. You can't do this job. This is not a profession where you can plug in somewhere and just kind of ride the tidal wave of everybody else working.
No, absolutely. If you think you're going to walk in and just have success and put forth minimal effort, or be a part of a staff, I know the new thing now is all the major programs, right? You have your staff of 5 for football, plus all the interns, and then you have the dietitians, and then you have the sports. Hey, I think that's the best thing for me was I came up from, I was a D3 athlete, coached at D2, been at the FCS level, been at the Power 5 level. Now I'm at what you would consider a mid-major program.
Right.
And, I've had to do it all, right? I was the strength coach. I was a sports psychologist. I was the
nutritionist.
Nutritionist. I was a guy, shoot, at one point in time, we're buying shakes and I'm running down the trainer, getting their foot-long cooler and filling it with ice and putting the shakes in there so the guys could take the shakes out of the ice, and how I've been the equipment manager. I've been the trainer. I mean, I don't know much about taping ankles, but I've taped an ankle because that's what needed to get done so I could get somebody, through a workout.
Yeah. I don't know, and I'm sure you've experienced this as well. I don't know that I could claim to be the practitioner that I am today without those types of experiences.
Oh, absolutely.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It creates a different perspective, right?
Right.
So when you have an athlete come to you needing something, wanting something, you can relate to them on so many different levels,
right?
Because of your experiences. Not to take away from any of the other professionals, but when an athlete comes to me and there's like, oh, you know what, coach, this, I've had this situation, I tweaked this in practice and in my, I got this going on at home, and it's like, oh, hey, come on. Let's talk about what's going on. Let's dig into this. Let's figure this out so that we can get you on the right path where you feel good about what you're doing and about who you are and what you're, and where we're going with things.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I want to make sure that I don't cross the line as far as professional boundaries, but sometimes we're the psychologists.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And sometimes we have to take on that role because there is nobody else to do it.
Well, oh yes, so much. But you look at our title, coach, right? And it comes from the word coach, meaning we transported somebody from a coach was used to transport somebody from point A to point B.
Right.
And so that's what we do. And sometimes in that process, you have to do those things because we take our athletes to another level, right? It's not just, and I think for my program, it's not just we're making you a stronger bench presser or a stronger squatter, giving you a bigger power clean. We're taking you from an 17, 18-year-old young man to a 21, 22-year-old young adult man, and there is so much into that process of learning how to overcome adversity, whether that's the adversity of the iron, the adversity of the conditioning session that we went through, the fact that, oh, wait a minute, I got 100 reps in practice the other day, but today I'm only getting 25 reps. Coach, what's going on there? They come to you because you're the one that's there.
Right. It's, when they walk in that front door, there's a whole lot that goes on before they go out that back door into life.
Right.
Or
Absolutely.
when they walk in that back door and go out the front door, however you want to look at it.
Right.
But when they're in there and they're navigating their way through the house or through the maze or whatever we want to call it, there's a whole lot that goes on. Would you say that one of the biggest things that especially athletes have to learn, but to include young professionals in this profession, is consistency and persistence?
Yes.
Those two things, Coach, I found that every time I'm sitting down and I'm talking to an athlete or male or female young professional or anybody that's getting into performance, I say, hey, look, you got to show up every day, because if you want to get better or if you want to do better for your athlete, you can't be out of 12 training sessions. You can't be engaged in only 5 or 6.
Right.
You have to be engaged in every one of them. And they have to know that you're there.
Yes.
Otherwise, you lose them.
Well, that's one of the things, that's one of the things I include. So when I give my staff, kind of my staff policies, one of those bullet points is consistency. We all have good days and we all have bad days, but the athlete can't tell which one is which for you, and you have to be on a steady keel as a coach for yourself so that you can be what that athlete needs, for that day. Sometimes it's, sometimes it's a pat in the back and sometimes it's a yank on the choke chain to get them going.
Yeah. Sometimes it is. Let's stay on that young strength and conditioning coach or performance practitioner for a second. When they walk in the door, a lot of times we know that you're excited. Let's just be real. You're excited when you come out of college. You think you got it all. Now you're ready. What is it that you warn them about when they walk into that first job that you think is important to make sure that they stay, or that they stay in the profession, or at least stay on the right track in the profession? We all know some of those strength coaches that jumped off the track.
Right.
And they're doing some weird things or have done, you're like, I'm going to stay with.
I think, the first thing is they have to understand the athlete is number one. Right? For us, the athlete is number one. You're also, again, you are support staff to some head coach out there who is going to ask you to do some absurd, ridiculous thing that you completely disagree with and or is outside of what the textbook is going to tell you is right for their sport, right? So, you have to be, you kind of have to be that barrier between what the head coach wants and what the athlete needs, right?
Right.
But you also have to be patient. I also tell them that there's a patience because it's, again, we talked about consistency and persistence, right?
Right.
So there really is no fast track to the top. And so you have to be able to, be where your feet are and make, whatever team you're working with. For us right now, we bring in guys. We have two part-time strength coach positions, and they rotate, right? So I'm getting a lot of young professionals coming in, and it's like, you know what? Do the best you can with the sports that you're working with and give it everything you got. And so your results will speak, and, you get out there and people will see that you are good at what you do. And that speaks as much or more than what you can actually say about yourself.
Right. Right. Creating value for yourself. That's the number one way to do it. Go out there and just, so you have the newly formed cricket team when you really wanted the baseball team.
Right.
Well, these guys are athletes too.
Yeah.
And they consider what they're doing important. At least it's important to them. So they have to become important to you. You can't, just because you're working with the tennis team.
Right.
Doesn't mean you can do less because you worked with the football team at your last gig.
Right.
That you can't do less. You have to do, in some cases, you have to show your value or create. Well, you have to show your value even more to athletes like that because they're already guessing sometimes that you'd rather be working with the basketball team.
Right.
They see you talking to the basketball coach every day, and they feel like you're trying to get over there. And when you walk in the weight room with them, you're kind of
No, exactly.
So real careful about how you approach and how you consider what your value is to how you build your value to the team.
Right.
Something like that.
Right. But then, but also, whatever your end goal is, and I always tell them this, I've coached about every sport there is, and I've taken every one of those experiences and I use the knowledge that I got from working with those athletes and add it into what I do with football now. Right. I was the strength coach for volleyball. I was the strength coach for baseball, and tennis. And you know what? I learned a lot about the shoulder mechanics and shoulder health and upper back and guess what? I use that now when I put together my programs for quarterbacks.
Look, Coach, I learned a lot about, stability and core control, even more than, when we came through in the early aughts of the 2000s, when it was the buzzword. I learned a lot more about what all that was when I started training a skeleton athlete.
Right.
And a bobsled athlete, and how much control you have to have going 80 miles an hour down a big ice tube with no protection.
Right.
So and work with that athlete. The great thing about him is he was a former wide receiver as a football player, and so we could kind of start on the same level, but and then shift it over to that sport, what he needed physically and what we needed to do. So in that vein, talking about training, different types of athletes and working with different types of athletes, we both know that the athlete is the center of attention.
Yes.
One of the things I found that gets shuffled off to the side sometimes is the demands of the sport by positions as needed.
Yes.
So if I'm a soccer player, we can't just generally go out and say, okay, we need to do 3 to 5K runs or these types of things because we need to have some cardio. Then you go out and you watch a soccer match and you realize it's a series of sprints, stops, starts, and changes of directions. And while a good aerobic base is necessary, there's a whole lot more that sport demands above that. So let's talk about the demands of the sport a little bit and how we have to include that in our thought process.
Right. So, that's the other thing, you talk about the when a young professional comes in, I mean, they have to be the master or whatever you want to call it of that sport. Right. I need them to know, if they're not familiar with it, I need them to research it as much as possible. I also want them to sit down with the sport coach to understand what their perspective is on their sport, because like you say, you take soccer and, you and I can look at it and see it as intermittent sprints over a certain time period with, varying, right? You're sprinting, you're walking, you're jogging, But if that head coach's perspective is, hey, we just need long, continuous aerobic work, then you have to balance the science side of it with what the coach's perspective is of that sport. And so when you sit down and talk with that coach, I tell them, when you sit down and talk with that coach, you're not trying to convince them otherwise. You may be trying to convince them that adding in something may make their recipe a little bit better. Right.
It's another hat that we wear, those soft skills.
Yes.
That we have to employ. And the first thing I've always told coaches when I walked in is, Coach, I'm not trying to take over your team.
Right.
That's not why I'm here. I'm here to be a value-added resource for you. So how can I help you?
Right.
And I've always found that approach. After my first disaster, walking in, talking to a coach, I learned really quick that, sometimes you have to let the individual know that you're there for them, not the other way around.
Yes.
I'm not here to make a name for myself. I'm here to help you be successful with your team. What do you think they need? That's what I'm hearing from you, Coach, and that's what I kind of expected to hear when I got that question, because I know, I've followed enough of your stuff and looked at enough of yours during the background to know that, okay, he didn't just walk in and start wielding power.
No.
And in fact, I would say you probably did the opposite based on what I could put together and just talking to you today. Probably every coach you walked in and talked to was ready for you to get to work.
Yes.
Because you didn't come in with the attitude. We both seen the opposite.
Oh, yeah.
We both seen the opposite. And I had a colleague come in and he told me, he said, why are you able to get invitations to sit in coaches' offices and go to coaches' meetings? I said, because I try to be part of what they're doing.
Right.
I don't try to tell them what they need to do. I let
No,
them,
absolutely.
I let them tell me what they want from me. What is it you want from me?
Yes.
How can I help you? Go
Yeah.
ahead.
And no, I that's 100%. It's like where, I said this when I talked about talking to our athletes, right? I'm just a piece of the puzzle. Where do I fit in? Where can I help you become the best team out there, right? Where can we maximize ourselves and do what we can? Now, I have, when you enter my threshold, right, of the weight room, there's a certain attitude that we're going to take, but I'm going to fit in to your program
Right.
as best I can. And it's funny. I had a conversation with our administration, and I was asking for some stuff for the weight room, and one of our athletic directors is like, you know what the best thing about you is, Eric? I said, what's that? He goes, when you ask for something, you have about 100 reasons why, and explanations and detailed explanations as to why this is going to benefit our program. So it's hard to say no to you.
It helps, doesn't it?
It does. No,
Yeah.
it does. And it's, you have that conversation with the sport coach, it's like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this with your athletes. And they're like, oh yeah, why is that? And it's like, well, this is what I'm seeing. This is what I've researched, and this is what that's telling me. And so, I think this may benefit our program. And, they either give me the yay or nay, and it's like, okay, yay, let's run with it. Nay, all right, well, I'm going to table that. I'm persistent. It may not work right
Right.
now. I'm gonna come back at it a little bit in a little while. And so, I think that's how you gotta kind of survive. Survive in advance, right? Just keep
Yeah.
doing what you do. And if something doesn't work, hell, I've run down so many bad roads that I don't know as many good roads that
Yeah. I don't know if I could get back to a good road if I passed it by.
right.
Because I've took the wrong turn and had to end up going what I tell my athletes all the time, and I apply to myself. Boy, you've gone up the steep side of the mountain more often than you should have.
Right. Mm-hmm.
When you should have took the stairs on the other side,
Exactly.
but
Exactly.
you decided to scale the cliff. But let's kind of shift with the profession. Let's kind of shift away from the people and shift to the profession itself. Where
Yeah.
was the profession in your mind when you came in? Where's it now? And where do you think it needs to go?
Well, yeah, I think I'm old enough where I look back. There weren't Strength and conditioning wasn't as prominent when
Yep.
I started. My first job was in 1995,
Right.
and there weren't your major schools maybe had a strength and conditioning staff, but whether that most of them were doing more than just one sport.
Yeah.
That they were the staff for the entire department, and I think we were all trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
I
The
went and
weightlifting
visited.
coach.
What?
I said the weightlifting coach.
Yeah, the weightlifting coach, right?
Yeah.
And our lane, that was it, right?
Right.
Hey, get them stronger. And some departments, some universities, they allowed them to run them, get them in condition or get them faster. You think back in Nebraska,
Right.
of the mid '90s when they were rolling up national championships.
Right.
That was a
Right.
staff. That was a unique situation, right? It was a staff dedicated to football. They took care of all aspects of training, right? And
Yep.
so I think our departments have grown from that, and I think the expectations are that we offer more to the athletes, right, and to our teams, so that now like we said, now you have a staff for football, you have a staff for basketball, you have a
Right.
staff for your Olympic sports, and
And
so
those are even parsing out.
Right, right. So now, yeah. And so the profession has grown so much in the time that I've been a coach. You know, there are so many more people that are wanting to become strength coaches, that are trying to get into the profession. And I think the one downside is they all see the top, right?
Right.
Whatever their goal is, I want to be a strength coach in the Power Five, or I want to be in the NFL, or I want to be in the NBA.
Right.
And they all think that that's the destination. And I don't see this profession as a destination profession. Okay.
I understand exactly what you mean.
Yeah. I see it. Okay. I understand. If you want to become a head strength coach, you want to be a director of sports performance or university, such as myself, then you better be willing to do that at any one of the locations that are available, because there aren't very many of these positions,
right?
Available, right? And if you want to get into the NFL, I'm more of a football guy now, so if you want to get into the NFL, well, hell, there's only 32 of those, and that's 32 head strength coaches, and now they're starting to create a little bit bigger staffs, but for the longest time, it was 2 strength coaches. So that makes 64 strength coaches in the NFL.
Right. Now a lot of teams may have 3, the occasional 4th one.
Right.
But yeah, it was 1 or 2 early on, and that was it.
And now we're moving to, okay, so now we have your strength professional who's going to focus on that. You have your science professional. We've created a sports science. When you and I started out, you were the sports scientist and the strength coach, and we talked about that already. But so now we're creating more avenues of availability for individuals that want to get into the profession, and I think that's great. Right?
I think we have. I sometimes break it down like this. I'm not sure if this is the correct way to do it, even, Coach. But we have performance, and then we have all those elements of performance, which being a strength coach, being a nutritionist, being a psychologist, all of those are part of that. And any one of those people can be the director of the team.
Yes.
But the most uniquely suited, and maybe I'm biased, but I don't think so, the most uniquely suited is the strength coach.
Yes.
Because he ends up doing all of those jobs by proxy sometimes, or sometimes just because he's the only person that's even close to what it is, depending on the size of the organization or the institution.
No, exactly. Especially depending on the size of the institution and their background, right? Now, we talk about where the profession's going now. We're finding you're finding strength coaches that have specialized in one area. That kind of pigeonholes their view on things versus somebody who has been in a smaller institution that has to do more, right? It may be like this is where we began, right? If I'm at a smaller institution and I'm wearing all those hats, that right now that's a frustrating situation that is wearing you out and stuff. But if your goal is to move up levels, and that's going to be to your benefit. That's going to be to your benefit because your knowledge base is wider.
Speaking of that knowledge base, I think for folks who started between 85 and 90, 95, 97, somewhere in there, 87 and 97, for individuals who got into this field during that time, there was no such thing as exercise science.
No.
The National Strength and Conditioning Association was just getting started.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Athletic training had just kind of separated themselves a little bit. So if you wanted to know about nutrition, you had to study nutrition.
Yes.
If you wanted to know about, kinesiology, you had to study that stuff.
Yes.
Because your focus 9 times out of 10 was more focused on the coaching, which I don't think is wrong, because I think we've gotten a little too far away from that, in the academic side. But
Yes.
but all of those little things that we're talking about right now, if we wanted to know about them, we had to, take a class or 2 or 3 or 5 and try to learn about those things so that we could have realistic conversations and real conversations with our athletes, not only our athletes, but maybe a doctor or 2 or a coach or whatever. So it wasn't exercise science today where they try to touch on all that stuff.
No, exactly. If you want to learn about it, you had to go seek out the knowledge, right? Because you didn't have it. It was like I was telling somebody, or I was on a podcast. I was explaining, as an athlete, I was an Olympic-based, ground-based athlete, right? And when I got my first job at Saginaw Valley State, Ken Manning was starting at Michigan State, and Ken Manning at the time was known in the profession as a high-intensity machine-based guy. And it's like,
right.
You know what? I'm going to go learn from him, because he coaches different than me. It's a different way of training, and he has to coach a different way. And, and so I went and learned from those guys, and it's just like
right.
for myself now, we don't have a sports science department here at New Mexico State.
You do. That's what I was going to say.
Science department,
Yeah, yes, you do.
And so, I'm the one running GPS for the football team. So, what I got to do? I'm calling people and asking questions. I'm searching. I'm reading the research. I'm doing the work so that we can have that available to our athletes, so that I have that knowledge. And so, I find that as a strength, for a developing strength coach.
But I feel like that's a strength too. I still jump into a lot of stuff. The 3 areas of expertise I claim are movement, energy systems. Everything's energy systems, though.
Sure.
Movement, energy systems, and management. People says, well, that's very vague. What do you mean? Those are your areas of expertise. I said, it's not the only thing I do, but it's where I have the most study, the most experience. So if you want to talk about biomechanics and moving and what correct movement looks like, and when to correct movement and how to correct movement, I'm all for that. You want to talk about energy systems and how to train those energy systems. Everybody says, well, everybody does that, but that's sometimes the problem. Everybody does it, but an energy system is an energy system is an energy system. If you're going to train aerobically, there's some limitations on what's aerobic training and not.
Right.
So you can say, well, we got an aerobic component to this. Well, okay, an aerobic component to sprint training is still not aerobic training.
Right.
So we start talking about stuff like that and going back and forth between those kind of things. I say all that to talk about the collection of data. Now you do the GPS for the football team, and so you're your own data department.
Yes.
How much data do you think is necessary, and when is it too much for your situation?
For my situation, there's days I'll tell you where any data is too much.
I got you.
So I think through experience, there are a lot of weeds out there, right?
Right.
There's a lot of data out there, right? And so when I started here with the GPS, it was like you're trying to look at everything. Oh my God, look at all these numbers. I want to collect it all. No, wait a minute. No, you
there
can't.
You go.
You're right. You just can't. So
it's like a whole different world, man.
It is a whole different world. And you know what? The beauty of it is there's people out there that are way smarter and way more in tune to it than myself. And so I look to those guys, and I look to those guys hey, what are they looking at? And I have friends in the profession that do that.
Yeah.
And I asked, what are you looking at? Because now I can kind of fine tune off of that what I'm looking at. And honestly, you know, right now I'm trying to whittle it down to maybe 2 or 3 things. Of all the metrics that we look at, I'm trying to whittle it down to maybe 2 or 3 things that I can make educated assumptions and guesses on to improve our outcomes on the field.
I'm a big believer in threes, man.
Yeah.
Find 3 things, you know, that are going to make a difference.
Yes.
And then, you know, to your athlete that you can show them.
Yes.
You know, look, you did this in practice. Let's say we're talking about a wide receiver. Okay, this was how much ground you covered in practice today at this rate, and you've been doing it this way for 6 weeks. Yeah. Why don't we pick up the pace a little bit, or why don't we get 3 or 4 more reps in and see if that helps you not get so gassed on the field because during the 2-minute drill, because obviously our conditioning is not helping. So we need to get you some more reps so that you're used to being on the field and going.
Right. And I think it started.
Now I'm making all that up, Coach, because I'm just trying to make a point.
Well, you know what? You talked about data, and I think the athlete component is the most important part because I had this conversation with one of our wide receivers last week. He's a guy was a high performer, was injured, has rehabbed, has come back, and is now getting back into becoming a high performer. And he came by and he was like, "Coach, can I see my numbers for the day?" I was like, "Absolutely. Yeah, this isn't a secret. Come on in."
Right.
We sat down and I pulled out his numbers, and the first one was his total volume, right? Total yardage for the day. And I said, "Wow, this is really high for you." And I said, "How do you feel?" This was after practice. I said, "How do you feel?" He goes, "Actually, Coach, I feel great." It goes, "I'm surprised I ran that much." I was like, "Really? Okay." I said, here's your high threshold running. This is really high for you." He goes, "No." He goes, "No." I'm like, "Okay." So what the numbers were telling me and what he's telling me were kind of 2 different things. So it's like, you know what? Numbers are great, but how that athlete feels, again, that comes down, and we were able to, we looked at his that day, and then we looked at his entire week, and he was like, "You know what?" He goes, I'm getting more done. And he goes, "And I'm getting more reps in practice." And I'm, he was saying the things. He goes, "But I feel great." I was like, "Good. Then we are tracking in the right direction."
Yeah. Some guys, the data can make you do some things sometimes because in this era of load management, it can make you back off of a guy if you're not paying attention. You can say, "Oh man, we need to get him less reps."
Right. And
if you weren't talking to him,
right. And I think here's where I think your perspective going into it all makes the difference. So when I started with GPS, now I was at the University of Minnesota, and we were one of the early adopters of using GPS. Okay, and then here in Mexico, we were fortunate enough to get it here. My perspective has always been how far can I take the athlete before I need to back off versus what is the least amount to get the most. I tend to push harder, farther than doing the kind of the minimum required dose, right? So I think depending on how you come at it, you're going to look at your athletes in 2 different perspectives there.
I think there's at least from my experience, there's a couple of schools of thought on that, and I'm just to make it simple, old school and new school.
Mm-hmm.
Old school is push them.
Right.
New school is manage the load so they can get the most out of the least amount of effort.
Right.
And I might be oversimplifying that. I'm not trying to there's a lot of new stuff that's good.
No, absolutely.
But what I'm saying is there's got to be a happy medium. And,
yes.
and I think, for me, I get there by pushing, and I'd rather pull a kid back a little bit than, have to push him. If that makes sense.
100%.
If you're used to me, if you're used to me managing your load, hey, coach, this is a no load day or a deload day or whatever. I had never even heard of that, man. What are you talking about? So if I have to push you all the time, I want you to get used to. I want to build your capacity to work, basically.
Right. And now, long before there was GPS, I used to tell the teams, the football team in the summertime, there's going to become a point in time where I need to be saying "whoa" instead of "giddy up."
Yeah.
And so I could see it, right? You could see it in your athletes where it's time for you to pull back because they're rip raring and ready to go, and if we're going into a season and I'm still trying to push you to get through, then we did something wrong. Right.
We and speaking of, when I look at that, I've done nothing to build your capacity if I'm still trying to, if I'm not handing you over to the coach fresh.
Right.
You leave me in the summertime with that day you walk into that first day of practice, with the sports coach, you should be feeling good. You should be excited. Everything should be working correctly, and you should be stronger, moving better, and faster than you were last year.
Absolutely. And, I always tell them too, I said, hey, just remember, those coaches have been on vacation all summer, so they're rip roaring ready to go. You've been putting in the work. So you show them that you're ready to do whatever they ask them to do.
Yeah, they're going to test you, but that's their job.
That's their job.
They want to see what you've been doing and if you've made any progress physically.
Yes.
Because learning plays is learning plays. I used to tell the guys I coached in football, hey, look, that I trained that played football, I said, hey, look, if you want to be a better receiver, you have to not only do what we're doing in here in the weight room and in conditioning and all this stuff. I said, you have to go work on your skills.
Yes.
You have to at least go hone your skills. You can't just ignore your skills and think you're going to be, as good as you were, the same as you were last year, even the same.
Right.
Because you haven't done anything.
Right.
And you can't wait till practice.
Yeah.
So I can't teach you that. That's one of the things. I know that you don't deal at this level too much, but you get freshman athletes in.
Yes.
And they come in. What's the number one thing that they have to learn when they walk in your weight room or into your program?
Patience.
Okay.
Because there's going to be a learning curve between them and myself. And as a group, everybody's coming from a different background. And so we have to find the common language, because I'm going to say things as a strength coach that maybe their high school didn't say. I'm going to teach a technique maybe a little bit differently. And so they need to be able to be patient with me.
Okay. I like that. And, patient with the coach, patience with themselves, because, you come from, a high intensity based program where you don't handle a lot of weight. You focus on how you're moving and the execution of the technique, into maybe a program where you're going to do some lifting. Now you're going to handle some weight. Now that takes patience.
That takes patience.
Yeah. Right. Styles and approaches always, when you go from one gym to another one, I don't care if it's a performance if it's a private practice or if it's a educational institution or whatever, you're always gonna be waiting and learning.
Yes.
All right, Coach. Let me. Actually, I hate to get to this point because we get going and we can talk about this stuff all day, but
Yeah.
I'm not going to take your entire Saturday because I know you probably working. But I got a final question that we ask sometimes that we like to ask, and I think it's appropriate for you. If there was one athlete, not by name, by position and sport played, that would more than likely be successful in any sport they attempted, what position and what sport would they come from?
God. I heard you ask this question on one of your.
Did you?
Yeah. And I was like, man, I hope they don't ask me that question.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
You got me. You got me. Gosh,
And after, hey, look, Coach, after you heard me ask it, or maybe Chris asked it on the other show, you probably said, "Let me see who I'm going to pick." Now you.
Well, you know what? I think. I don't know. What I think is a unique athletic trait or skill is throwing the hammer. Now I've done it.
Yeah.
You have to be strong. You have to be fast, explosive. You also have to have a great sense of awareness.
That's a good point.
That is unique because of the method of travel in that. I think that was one of the first, when I heard that question before, that was kind of one of the first athletes I thought of. Also I started to think about, I look at some of the other sports that have other unique skill sets, such as tennis. And I look at some of those and I think, what you have to do, I think being an individual athlete or individual competitor,
right,
sets you up for success, especially like if you think about tennis, being the only one on the court mentally goes a long way, and being able to move. I think you could put them in team situation, and I think you would find that they could be successful.
Okay. So you're choosing tennis or hammer thrower? I
think I'm going to take the hammer thrower, being that I was a former hammer thrower.
Okay, I'm gonna. Yeah, that's a unique answer, and I think the first one. But I can see it, and the first thing that popped in my mind, I said, well, the discus thrower is the same, but it's a different. That spin is altogether different.
Yes, it is.
And when I just thought about it because I threw the discus a little bit, and I said, man, I don't know if I could throw a hammer. That thing is doing something different. I just, in my mind, I was
right.
like, okay. And then the footwork on that's altogether different.
Yes, it is.
It's not the same at all. Well, listen, Coach, I appreciate you taking the time on your weekend to come in and talk to us. I think it was a great conversation. There's a lot of little tidbits in there for everybody. I've already got a couple of questions on our social media because when I'm doing this, I'll say who I'm talking to. It comes out later.
Okay.
But we'll get a couple questions on our little insider thing.
Okay.
So we'll see what they come up with. But I appreciate your time, Coach. I know you're a busy guy. I know how much you do during the course of a week. So thank you for coming out, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've enjoyed our time, and it's an honor to be able to be a part of your show.
Well, we thank you, and ladies and gentlemen, this has been Performance Talk. We're here with Coach Eric Klein today, and it has been magnificent. Thank you very much. We're out.